Dumelang, welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Clement Manyatela. Great to have you with us here on SABC News. On the show tonight, are we going to see the reconfiguration of the GNU as we know it? Today, the ANC and the DA went separate ways in the Finance Committee, with the ANC supporting a proposal by ActionSA to amend the budget by removing the 0.5 percentage point increase in VAT and giving personal income taxes full relief for inflation. But what does this mean for the GNU, especially the relationship between the DA and the ANC? Is this the beginning of the end? We hear from both the DA and the ANC. Also on the show, is ActionSA about to join the GNU? The ANC seems to be satisfied with its negotiations with ActionSA. In fact, the Chief Whip of the ANC in Parliament, Mdumiseni Ntuli, said earlier today that ActionSA has been reasonable in discussions. So we'll speak to the leader of ActionSA, Herman Mashaba. And then later, does the Johannesburg Mayor, Dada Morero, have a plan to reverse the deterioration in the city of Johannesburg? And is he the right man for the job? The Mayor faces the nation tonight. But first, my comment. So the ANC has supported ActionSA's proposal today to amend the budget by removing the 0.5 percentage point increase in VAT and giving personal income taxes full relief for inflation. The proposal includes a 40-day pause or so for Treasury to redo this fiscal framework. What this essentially means is that the ANC has managed to negotiate some kind of a deal with ActionSA. But where does this leave the DA in the GNU if this budget will ultimately pass without the support of the DA? Here is ActionSA explaining earlier today what their proposal entails.
ActionSA concluded the meeting with the ANC on the understanding that the ANC would support no tax increases. However, we do recognize that it is the ANC's prerogative to conclude a deal with other parties within or outside the GNU. ActionSA remains resolute. We will not accept any tax increases.
So ActionSA has been explaining what really this means for them. Now, the ANC has gone also to go and support this proposal as well. The confusing thing, though, is that why is the ANC prepared to find ways to justify the removal of the VAT increase with ActionSA but not with the DA? Well, the answer to that is that maybe the DA asked for things in return that had nothing to do with the budget. They used the budget as a negotiating tool. At least that's what the ANC says. But then who says ActionSA is just lending its votes and its support for nothing? Because this is politics, it's a give and take. And one wonders what ActionSA has negotiated for its support on the amended budget. Now, while the ANC and ActionSA agreed on the need to amend the budget, the DA had its own proposal. The party officially tabled an amendment to reject the VAT budget.
The DA has proposed at various junctures and across two attempts at the budget to propose alternatives that doesn't punish South Africans with more tax. While we've been open-minded and we've taken a posture of collaboration with our partner, the ANC has failed to agree to the reforms that we need to get the economy going, and if we get the economy going, for our revenue to increase over time so that we don't need to increase taxes. And because of this refusal from the ANC to agree to reasonable politically neutral measures, I have now been mandated to go into this committee and amend the fiscal framework such that there will be no VAT increases.
So the party claimed that this is a significant step in the fight to protect poor South Africans by prioritizing economic growth and jobs. But was this really about poor South Africans, or was it about the DA's own interests? And if the budget ends up being amended as per the proposal by ActionSA and it gets enough support to pass, how will the DA ministers continue being part of a government whose budget they didn't support? I mean, that's the budget that will realize the social programs in their departments. So it doesn't really make sense to me. And if the ANC works with ActionSA and other smaller parties, it looks like they've got the numbers to pass the budget once it is amended. But where does that leave this GNU as we know it? So the question we're asking you tonight is, now that the DA has chosen to reject the budget, do you think that it makes sense for them to remain in the GNU? Do you think that the ANC should find a way to bring the DA back to the table, or should it work with ActionSA and other parties? You can share your thoughts with us by sending us a WhatsApp voice note on 078 459 1897. Remember to tell us your name and surname and where you're sending that voice note from. And please keep it at 30 seconds. Alternatively, you can send us an X on @FaceTheNation SABC. All right, let's go straight to that conversation and start with the leader of ActionSA, Herman Mashaba. As you heard earlier on, ActionSA proposing to amend the budget by removing the 0.5 percentage point increase in VAT and giving personal income taxes full relief for inflation. The proposal includes those couple of days, about 30 or 40 days pause for Treasury to redo this fiscal framework. Herman Mashaba is the leader of ActionSA, joining us now in studio. Mr. Mashaba, thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Thank you so much, and good evening to Face the Nation listeners, and for the opportunity for us to clarify this particular matter. In fact, Clement, you mentioned a figure of 40 days. It can't happen before in 40 days. It's going to happen within 30 days. 30 days because if the Minister of Finance does not present a budget without VAT, and so forth, it'll then 1st of May, VAT will kick in. So this has got to happen, and it's going to happen sooner than even 30 days. But obviously, this has got to happen before the 1st of May. Otherwise, people of South Africa will be subjected to VAT. So for us as ActionSA and in discussion with the ANC, this is a matter of priority. One thing that I find difficult to really understand is why is the DA so hell-bent on wanting to plunge this country into a financial crisis? Because in the event of the committee not adopting our proposal today, because what they were proposing was going to really create a problem for the National Assembly tomorrow. So that's why with the ANC on Sunday, we gave them this proposal, not only the proposals to scrap VAT and taxes, was actually ideas on how they can raise more funding. You're aware of the 4 billion rands put into SARS. Just that alone with the capacity. Sure, Clement, you are aware there's 100 billion rands of unpaid taxes. That's the money available for revenue to officials to get, but they did not have the capacity. And there's already for this current financially on this budget, 4 billion rands to capacitate so that they can get access to this 100 billion rands of people who are not paying taxes.
But there are several other people that have been making these recommendations to the African National Congress. But for some reason, the Minister of Finance says, well, that's not really going to help because many of the suggestions that have been made are more long-term. And this additional revenue in spending is needed right now. So how did you, as ActionSA, get to convince the ANC to go back to the drawing table about the very same things that have been suggested before?
Well, Clement, obviously I can't really speak for the ANC, but in my engagement with them, on Sunday we had to really put our foot on the ground to say, look, guys, we are not saying we are against VAT, but here are tangible measures where you can actually raise much more than that. And we gave our proposals to them in writing. We said, take this to the Minister of Finance. Alan Besley, our Member of Parliament who sits in the committee, is a chartered accountant, is an educated, very successful business person. Some of us, we're in business, we understand how finances actually work. We just really need the political will. And we said to the ANC, If you've got the political will, honestly, this is a walk in the park. Don't punish South Africans by imposing taxes
Here's the challenge, Mr. Mashaba. What if the proposals that you've made don't stop the VAT hike? Because you can't amend the fiscal framework by just mere recommendations.
Well, unfortunately, look, Herman, for some of us, the DA might think they've got superior logic. Some of us, we might not be clever, but we're not that stupid. So the proposals we've given to the ANC, that basically means the Minister of Finance has got to come back to Parliament within the next 30 days at the latest to ensure that this budget passes. Now, you can imagine if they bring back the budget with the VAT increase, where are they going to get the support from? Not from ActionSA. That is given. And I don't think ANC will really be so reckless to bring something that they know all the parties will be against, including
Have
ActionSA.
they given you that guarantee, though? Because
we
this
don't
is
need,
a mere request to Treasury.
We don't need the guarantee. We need practical solutions to our country's problems. We're not asking for favors from the ANC. We are saying to the ANC, remove this VAT, bring back a budget without VAT, include the proposals we've given you. The Minister of Finance agrees with us. The chairperson of the finance committees agree with us. Their negotiating team, they agreed with us. So we said it's not really something that you needed to be a rocket scientist to figure out. So obviously, if they are going to bring the budget with VAT, I can tell you now, I can tell the ANC, that they will not really pass that budget.
And you're assuring South Africans that. Let me tell you why I'm saying that, Mr. Mashaba, because there are many times when as political leaders you make these bold assertions and commitments to South Africans only to turn back on them. And
well, no, the commitment I can make to people of South Africa is that in the event that this budget comes back with VAT, ActionSA is not going to support it. And other parties, the ANC will not really have the majority. So that's a fact. And that's something, you want me to give it to you in writing now? I'm happy to do that.
Maybe you should, because the last time you said that, you said, we will not work with the ANC.
Yeah, but
and what happened afterwards?
Yeah, but obviously this is a totally different subject matter. I'm a patriot. I love my country. Yeah. I will do what is in the best interest of our country. I think the ANC working with the DA, unfortunately, DA is a very abusive partner. I've got experience with them. And the only way we could really save the country, like we did in Tshwane. You look at the situation in Tshwane, it's a typical example of the DA arrogance, because they thought by going behind our back to negotiate with the ANC for our removal, what happens? Then I went to kill them first. And now, here, they wanted to plunge the country into a financial crisis so that they can be seen to really have superior logic. And I realized this, and I warned the ANC about this, to say this is what the ANC, the DA is trying to do. That's why they have already got their own foreign policy on the side to go and misinform the world community about what's happening in our country.
Okay, so if the finance minister comes back within these stipulated days with a reworked budget that doesn't include a VAT, that does provide relief in as far as personal income tax is concerned and considers that inflation, you as ActionSA are going to support this budget. What's in it for you?
What's in there for us? Firstly, it's not really about us. It's about our country. And we said to the ANC, if they want us involved in their government, like I've said, even at the time when we took over Tshwane, that we're happy as ActionSA to assist the ANC in Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni, because unfortunately these two metros are also in a mess. And mess that can be fixed, because I'm telling you, Clement, please have a look at the finances of Johannesburg and Ekurhuleni. Much better than when we took over Tshwane. Our mayor, and working with the ANC and EFF, and other parties, we've managed to turn that ship around in a matter of 6 months. The mayor actually tomorrow is addressing the media about the successes and inroads that they are making. So we believe we are here. If ANC is willing to get us to join their government, we as ActionSA, we've got capable team. I mean, Alan Bisley demonstrated that today. To get his proposal supported in the committee. So if they invite us to participate in government without any doubt, we will take it.
I'm glad you say that, because I would really want us to also be honest about the politics here. The last time you came here, you were honest and you said politics is about we want power. When I asked you about the negotiations with the ANC, and in this case, as ActionSA, I mean, do you just lend your support to the ANC without having considered what it is that you would be able to participate in should you be...
Well, we've made it clear, abundantly clear to them that would obviously in the event that they support our proposal, because for them to really be able to deliver on that on the proposal we gave them, unfortunately, they need us. They need our input, and we are prepared to play that role for our country.
And they need, by input, you mean your capacity as well?
Our capacity, give them capable team of the ministers and officials that can ensure that our country actually succeed.
Okay, some people are now branding you as the incoming Home Affairs Minister. I'm sure you've seen. Are you prepared to be one of those people that have the capacity in ActionSA that assists in the GNU?
Well, Clement, I've indicated to people of South Africa if they can allow me to play the space and the role of, from outside. But in the event that I'm needed in some way, I will reluctantly do it. I think I believe strategically the position I'm at, I'm not a liability to the party, and I'm still prepared to serve my country, and I'm prepared willingly to serve my country from outside government. But because I have our ActionSA, our party has got brilliant capacity in terms of having the ministers. But obviously, if I'm demanded to really play that role, I will really play it.
One of the things you've been pushing for as ActionSA is for cabinet to be trimmed. It's the same thing that the DA pushed for until they were invited to come serve in government. And because now it serves them to be part of this bloated cabinet, they were not worried about it. As ActionSA, you've been talking a lot about the need to trim cabinet. What happens when you get brought into the GNU and you just go and you expand it and bloat it further? Okay,
let me obviously share this in confidence. We can share it with people of South Africa. We're not desperate to really go into an arrangement where the terms of this arrangement are not agreed upon in advance. So this period, while the minister is busy putting together the budget, we are at the same time agreed with the ANC for us to give them the conditions. I think we, as ActionSA, we believe we don't need deputy ministers. However, we are saying to the ANC, if ever you want to keep 2 or 3, come and justify it to us. That's really one of the conditions.
So,
for us as ActionSA, we are going to get involved in a legally binding arrangements of us.
And you're not going to be part of the GNU that has a bloated cabinet?
Absolutely not.
All right. Herman Mashaba, let me thank you. Thank you so much for making time for us.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it. That is the leader of ActionSA, Herman Mashaba. Let's move over now to the ANC Chief Whip in Parliament. This is someone who's been leading negotiations between all these different parties in as far as this budget is concerned. And that is Mdumiseni Ntuli, who joins us now over the line. They have been scrambling this evening and throughout the day, moving from one meeting to the next. Mdu, thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Good evening, Clement, and good evening to the viewers of 404, your show, and thank you very much for allowing me to participate in this interview over the phone, given the hectic schedule that is before me this evening.
All right. Mdu, I want to start off with what happened in the Finance Committee today. So you have supported this proposal by ActionSA. But the challenge here is that this is a mere proposal. At the end of the day, it still needs the finance minister who must rework this fiscal framework and then come back to the table. Can the finance minister do that? Because part of what is being proposed by ActionSA has been proposed before.
Well, Clement, I mean, you would understand that all major decisions in the country originate from a proposal. Somebody has to sit back somewhere, think about how to respond to a particular situation before them, and then develop a proposal and share it with other people for consideration. So I do want to applaud the ActionSA as well as the IFP, those two organizations in particular, for being loyal to the discussions we've had and for being committed to ensure that whatever that we have agreed upon is pursued to its logical conclusion. I also know that what they did today, those organizations together with the ANC, is also applauded by other GNU members whose individual members do not necessarily sit in the portfolio committee on the standing committee on finance. How this is going to be taken forward, Clement, is that the portfolio committee, through the portfolio committee, let me put it that way, there will be an engagement with the minister as well as the National Department of Treasury to look at different alternatives, means and ways through which we can deal with the question of the VAT. Because as you know, the ANC said this from the beginning, Clement, that we want to engage in this process with an open mind. We are a listening organization. We know that many of our people have raised concerns about the VAT and its impact and implication. And if there are other parties such as the ActionSA, ourselves as the ANC and the IFP, who believe that something can still be done to explore an alternative to the VAT, it's our considered view that we can't close the door for those opinions on the basis that other parties, including the DA, want us to reject the budget of the country. Can't do so. We've got to have a budget so that the country will continue to do its own work.
But why did it take ActionSA for you as the ANC and even as government to go and reconsider this 0.5 percentage point hike? South Africans were telling you in their numbers that we cannot afford this. They told you this the first time when we heard that this is planned to be part of the proposal. They told you this the second time when the finance minister went ahead and still presented it. And yet you still didn't take it upon yourselves as the ANC or even as government to go and reconsider it. It had to be ActionSA that comes and says, let's look at other options.
Well, let me explain, Clement, so that you understand how the process of budgeting happens. There was a first proposal, which was 2%, and later on, in the budget that was not presented, it was reduced to 0.5%. Our view as the ANC was that this now is before Parliament. The ANC caucus in Parliament must then reflect on this matter and engage with other political parties in an effort to find a common ground in order to deal with what is otherwise a negative response to the hike of the 0.5 VAT. Now, it is not that the ANC was sitting back and therefore ActionSA arrived and said, let's do it this way. The ANC in its engagement with various political parties was exploring the different alternatives we need to work on. Now, that is the ANC in Parliament. That was undertaking that exercise. We never went to a discussion with any political party, including the ActionSA, and said we have no view. We said we've got views, but let's find a formula through which we can ultimately resolve this problem before the date at which the minister is determined for the VAT to kickstart. So it is not that the ANC was somewhere folding its arm, and there are many views that have been made. It's not that only the ActionSA. POSA, for instance, raised a similar question with us. The UDM, so there's been a discussion with all political parties. The fact that the two parties ultimately who had to agree on an approach, including this presentation in the committee, is the ANC and the ActionSA, is primarily because, besides the IFP, those are the two parties who are represented in the Standing Committee on Finance, and therefore had an obligation to refine both the content and the formulation of what goes to the committee.
Yeah, but it could have been you, though, as the ANC, that makes the proposal that says we've actually heard South Africans, we've heard some of the political parties that we've negotiated with, and therefore we are making this proposal that the finance minister go and reconsider this. This is a recommendation we are making, and this is how we can get that additional revenue that is much needed for this financial year. ActionSA is the one that says, as you heard from the leader Herman Mashaba, they're the ones that said, we are going to make this proposal. As the ANC, you come in to support that. Do you understand how it looks to South Africans who waited for you as, and I say that in quote, leader of society? They waited for you to say, you've heard us, what are you going to do going forward? And now it's ActionSA that comes and makes the proposal. But you are the one that has been leading the conversation with all the other parties.
Sure, let me deal with that, Clement. In fact, your proposition or your view on this matter, Clement, is predicated on the wrong assumption. The wrong assumption is that there was another platform through which this matter could have been discussed and finalized in the best interest of our people, other than the meeting of the portfolio committee that said today. There was no other platform. When you make an assumption that the ANC was not going to make this proposal in the Standing Committee on Finance, despite the fact that after the budget was announced, the ANC stood publicly and said, we agree with this budget, but we are noting the concerns of other political parties and various sectors of society. As a consequence of which, we are going to lead the initiative. And I thought we are going to recognize the importance of that intervention on our part. We are going to lead the initiative to convene meetings with each and every political party represented in Parliament to seek their own opinion, to share with them our own perspective, and find a way in which we can come to some compromise and consensus, as a consequence of which the budget can be passed by Parliament.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying, when you are saying, but why did you have to wait? You are such, it's almost like you are saying, there was another meeting that said, and we did not put any proposal. No. This was the first meeting of the portfolio committee. Anyone who had an idea had to wait until this portfolio committee convenes in order to make that proposal.
Okay, let me ask this then. The ActionSA says that if the finance minister comes back and has not taken away this VAT percentage increase or this VAT percentage hike, they're not going to support that budget. They're not going to vote for it. So what's your plan then? Are you confident as the ANC that the finance minister will find some way around this? And if he comes back and says, I've looked at all these options that are considered, but there's no way that we're going to get the additional revenue we need, therefore I keep this VAT percentage hike. What happens? What's your backup plan?
Okay, this is what is going to happen, Clement. It is not just the Minister of Finance and the National Treasurer who are required to revisit their own budget in order to accommodate what we are raising with the ActionSA and other political parties, including the IFP. We ourselves and other sectors of society would be perfectly at liberty to use the period between now and the 1st of May to make such a cogent suggestions about what other alternatives we believe must be explored in order to deal with the VAT question. It's our considered view that both the ANC and the ActionSA are organizations that are led by rational people who are scientific and who will participate in that process meaningfully and honestly, such that at the end of which we will have to contend with the outcome of what that process is saying. And by the way, the law that requires the voting on whether or not the VAT must be accepted by Parliament is only going to be done in October. So to make an assumption that we are going to fail before starting, as the DA seems to be advocating, is completely at variance with the reality as it obtains today. Let's allow the process, allow Parliament to approve the fiscal framework tomorrow, get government to spend the money to support the national imperatives of our country, while parallel to that, those of us who have a view about how to deal with the VAT are afforded an opportunity to further submit to the minister as well as the National Treasurer to find a solution on the matter.
Where does this leave the GNU? The DA and you as the ANC went your separate ways in that standing in the Finance Committee today. Where does this leave the GNU? Are we likely to see a reconfiguration? Because it also doesn't make sense that then the party becomes part of a government whose budget they didn't support.
Well, I don't know. The DA is going to have to answer that. The DA is going to have to answer that question, Clement, because the objective reality is that we've disagreed on this matter. And because we've disagreed on this matter, the question therefore that arises, how will you be trusted first and foremost by your partners in the GNU that without supporting the budget, but you will have the courage and the commitment to implement the budget when government is doing its own work? That question arises, and I think it's not a responsibility of the ANC to answer that question. It's a responsibility of the party that has decided voluntarily to walk away from all the commitments that were agreed to by other GNU partners and decided to take its own sole decision. What happens with that has to depend on how do they understand the impact and the implication of their position on this matter, which of course I must say is a very strange position, but it is also highly concerning how the DA has sought to project the ANC in public as an organization that is directionless and does not understand how to take South Africa to the next level. We don't agree with that assertion. Okay. And we leave it to them to decide what becomes the fate of their involvement in the GNU. But the GNU has never been and will never be a GNU because there's a DA. It will remain intact. It will proceed. It has a program. It will now have a funding to ensure that the program is implemented effectively on the ground.
All right, we're out of time, but I have to ask about the meeting between the president and John Steenhuisen, the leader of the DA. The DA said the president was going to meet with him. Did that meeting happen? Did they find some common ground?
I don't know. I don't know, Clement. I've been caught up in meetings myself, and I haven't had any confirmation or otherwise. But in any case, I was not going to be in that meeting because, as you say, it's President and John. So I have no knowledge of whether the meeting said, and if it said, what decisions, if any, were taken.
All right, Mdumiseni Ntuli, the ANC Chief Whip, thank you so much for making time. That's the man that's been in charge of leading the negotiations between the ANC and other parties, as the party has been scrambling really for support to get this budget to pass. All right, we've been asking you the question of what should happen now. Now that the DA has chosen to reject the budget, do you think it makes sense for them to remain in the GNU? And do you think the ANC should find a way to bring the DA back to the table, or should it work with ActionSA and other smaller parties? Let's start with your tweets. Tabiso says the DA has no place in the GNU. They're using the budget as a bargaining chip to get the ANC to reverse the already passed legislation. Honestly, it does not make sense for them to remain in the GNU if they're going to be opposed to everything the ANC does. Mlungisi says the DA must just leave this GNU. Their demands are irrelevant to the budget negotiations. ActionSA overtook them. Deja vu, that's what Wazelendo says. Ministerial posts, NHI, Bella Act, land expropriation with null compensation, now budget. Blue lights are lekker. The DA is not going anywhere unless they are kicked out. Thank you so much for your tweets. We also have some WhatsApp voice notes that you have sent us responding to this question that we're asking you tonight. Let's take a listen.
Thank you. This is Muzigai Senkosi. I think what needs to be done, DA must be removed from the GNU and just bring other players, more especially the ActionSA. I think they can have better ideas, innovative ideas that can take South Africa forward, because our focus should be for the health of the South Africa, not politicizing every other decision that has to be taken. Thank you.
My name is Stux Tumzamanagam from Woods outside Torabasdal. Thank you, Clement. I think ANC must remove the Democratic Alliance. It's better working with the ActionSA or EFF. We are sick and tired about a Democratic Alliance. Please.
Sam Alakotriko Clement Dumela. The crack is gradually widening, and the center will no longer hold if their differences are taking so long to be ironed out. DA fights its own battles at the pretext that it is against the increase of VAT. It is holding the gun on ANC's head. I personally think that the bone of contention here is Appropriation Act. Bye-bye.
All right, thank you so much for your WhatsApp voice notes. After the break, we hear from the Democratic Alliance. Dr. Mark Burke will speak to us. Stay with us here on SABC News. Welcome back. We've heard from ActionSA, which made a proposal in Parliament today to make amendments to the fiscal framework. The finance minister is now expected to come back. There's about a 30-day window period here. They expected the finance minister to come back and look into the recommendations made by ActionSA. We've heard from the ANC as well on why they supported that proposal by ActionSA. Let's hear from the DA now. The DA Member of Parliament is Dr. Mark Burke, who's joining us now via Zoom. Dr. Burke, thank you for making time. Good morning. Good evening.
Good evening, Clement. Good to be with you.
So, as the DA, you have officially earlier today tabled an amendment to reject this VAT budget. Why didn't you support this proposal by ActionSA, which, at least to me, seemed to be pushing for what you also want to see eventually for the removal of this 0.5% VAT hike?
Well, quite simply, our solution would have forced the minister to take VAT out of what's called the fiscal framework, which is a fancy word for a box that determines how big our revenue and expenditure should be. Parliament has it within its power to reduce the size of that box, and that's called amending the fiscal framework. So you've got one option in law, which is amending it, and you've got a second option in law, which is accepting it. The fiscal framework, as it stands, makes provision for 1% VAT increase over the next 2 years, 0.5% this year, 0.5% next year. ActionSA, with the IFP and the ANC, have sold South Africans down the river. They've accepted the current fiscal framework, and they've recommended that some of the elements therein be re-looked at. The only two options to this committee today was either to amend or to accept. We proposed an amendment, and ActionSA settled for acceptance.
But I spoke to Herman Mashaba earlier today, and his clarification on that is that that is not them accepting the fiscal framework as it is. That is them at least putting it in abeyance until the finance minister can come back with another option that removes that 0.5% hike. That hence the 30-day window period. And Herman Mashaba did indicate himself that if the finance minister comes back and he gives an option that still includes that VAT percentage hike, then as ActionSA, they're not going to vote for that.
Well, South Africans should ask themselves whether they trust a party that controls 6 of the 400 seats in Parliament to protect them against the ANC behemoth that likes to steamroll its partners. And then they should ask themselves if an individual that promised that never in 300 years would they ever speak to the ANC, only then to go into a coalition with the ANC in Tshwane. And it's the same party which, by the way, started the day by saying they're going to amend the fiscal framework, and by the end of the day said they're only going to recommend changes while accepting the fiscal framework. When a party and an individual which is that prone to flip-flopping is making promises of how in 2 months they might vote against certain bills in Parliament, I'd be very wary as South Africans of taking that promise on face value.
To be fair, though, Dr. Burke, you have flip-flopped yourselves as the Democratic Alliance. You're saying ActionSA ended up working with the ANC mayorship in Tshwane. You're right, because they flip-flopped on that. But you have equally flip-flopped as the Democratic Alliance. You've been telling South Africans for so long that you'd never work with the ANC, and yet you ended up doing that with your own justification. So if they must take your own justifications on why you ended up working with the ANC, why can't they take the ActionSA's justifications?
And the lead up to this election, we never misled South Africans. I happened to be stuck in a corridor while our federal leader was interviewing with international news before the election. And he was asked point blank whether he would rule out an option to work with the ANC if it came to it. And he said that he wouldn't be able to rule that out. We would have to look at what the options are. Some parties then went before the election to the media and said, see, this is what the DA is saying it will do to you. We took the shots for that honesty. We indicated before the election to South Africans that this might be a route that we'd have to consider. So there's no flip-flopping in my mind. We tried to rescue South Africa. We remain committed to that mission. But again, Herman Mashaba is not an individual to be trusted. I think there's a fair amount of trust in the DA as an organization, as is evidenced by our support in the polls. We're talking about a party that is below the margin of error, versus a party that represents 22% of the vote in South Africa. If I was a South African and I had to choose where I'm going to place my trust of protection, it wouldn't be in that below the margin of error party.
Where does this leave you now, right now, Dr. Burke? Because the ANC, I spoke to them a little earlier on, and Mdumiseni Ntuli said, when I asked about how the DA, what this whole thing means for the budget, and he said that, how will you as the DA with your ministers there in the government of unity be trusted if you have chosen not to support a budget, if when it comes to that voting, you are voting against the budget? So what do you say to South Africans who are asking themselves where this whole situation leaves the GNU?
Well, the first thing I'd say to South Africans who are asking themselves where we're at is that we're protecting them for tax increases that they can't afford. South Africans are overburdened. Even though we're a resilient people, everybody comes to a breaking point. Tax increases are simply not palatable to South Africans. Trust in government now is at 22%, whereas trust in the private sector is at 60%. For us to increase taxation in an environment where South Africans are saying they simply don't trust the government to manage their money well is ludicrous. South Africans are trying to protect. South Africans need protection from a government that's constantly trying to increase its revenue. But you ask a different question, which is, where does this leave the GNU? The fact of the matter is we'll now have to consider what's happened here today. How the ANC has in bad faith gone to parties outside of the GNU to try and find support for a budget that punishes South Africans. That's, of course, a very serious action that crosses a line. Our federal executive will meet and they will decide on a path forward. But what I can say is South Africans have no protection from the fiscal framework that has been adopted today without amendments, an opportunity missed to protect them from VAT increases. And that is solely at the feet of the ANC, the IFP, and ActionSA.
And I hear what you say, Dr. Burke, about this being a serious thing, but you've said something similar as the DA for so long now. You've been creating these red lines. You said the same about when the president was appointing his cabinet, that if we don't get our posts and we don't have our way, then we're going to reconsider our place in the GNU. The president didn't give in to your demands. You stayed in the GNU. You created a red line around the Bella Act, the NHI. Now there's the Expropriation Act. I can go on, and yet you still remained within the GNU. So it's almost like you're holding the gun to the ANC and making all sorts of threats, but knowing very well that you're not prepared to leave the GNU. So is this really serious enough for you to consider, or is this another threat?
Perhaps the gun analogy is not terrible, Clement. We had a water pistol before this budget vote. But the situation that we're now in is the ANC has 39% of the votes in Parliament. Even though the committee today with ActionSA, the IFP and the ANC support was able to ram through a procedurally flawed document. That document now has to go to Parliament to vote for approval. In an environment where the ANC controls 39% of the seats, the budget was always going to be a fallback mechanism to impose rationality on our counterparts. It remains that. There'll be potentially a process going forward tomorrow if the ANC decides to go ahead with it. And then there'll be another 3 bills that has to pass in coming months. And all I can say to the ANC is to do your worst and we'll do our best.
All right, Dr. Mark Burke, thank you so much for making time for us. Let's move to this now. The city of Johannesburg has been plagued by infrastructure challenges and an ongoing decline for well over a decade now, giving officials a headache. Whether you talk about crime, health, infrastructure, electricity and water supply, those are some of the issues that the city has had to grapple with on an ongoing basis. Recently, the proposed name change of Sandton Drive to Leila Khaled Drive, a Palestinian freedom fighter, has divided the city. In response to this proposal, the U.S. administration has threatened to shut down its consulate in Sandton if the street is renamed. We're now joined by the City of Johannesburg Executive Mayor Dada Morero. Mayor, thank you so much for making time for us. Good evening.
Thanks, Clement, and good evening to you.
I want to start off with the issue of renaming Sandton Drive. Where are the consultations in as far as that process is concerned?
Well, at this stage, you'd know that the matter has not come back to council for whether the public participation process. So what we know as a result of that, it has created a public discourse. and we are aware of that, and that is why we are taking a responsible view to also allow ourselves to engage with national government at the right time as and when they would want to engage with us, precisely because there's been a concern raised as part of a view that it may have some diplomatic issues that we may have to address. So as the city, we are open to that form of a discussion with national government. We are also sensitive to diplomatic issues.
Yeah.
And we're also sensitive to maintaining the relationships between South Africa and the United States. And I think it's a sovereign matter and will then be addressed and directed by the national government on how we want to move forward.
So are you leaving it up to national government to make the final decision?
Leaving it up to the discussion between the two of us, because we haven't had the discussion.
Yeah.
I'm basically saying, because it's a diplomatic matter, the responsibility therefore is sovereign, but the renaming of streets remains the responsibility of the city. So we'd have to find each other on the way forward, and they will advise on what the implications may be diplomatically. So we think we need to take a responsible position on this matter and handle this matter with the sensitivity it deserves. But remember, we took this resolution in 2018 when we arrived at this motion, which was sponsored by the Al-Jama party and supported by the ANC and the EFF.
So how do you balance the need for consultations between you and the president and also what the citizens of Johannesburg say? Because if the public consultations are done and you've got the majority of people in Johannesburg who say we support the renaming, then how do you justify coming back and saying, we hear what you have to say, but it doesn't matter because now there's this issue of diplomatic tensions that we have to consider? What trumps what?
At this stage, Clement, the public participation has indicated support for the renaming. But there are issues that we feel needs to be discussed between ourselves and national government. There's an indication that, of course, the renaming itself would have an impact, would have an implications in as far as diplomatic relations are concerned between South Africa and the United States.
Yeah.
And it's not only on the matter related to Sandton Drive. There are all other matters that the president or national government has raised as part of the engagements with the United States. And they then, of course, we said, look, there's this issue, let's hold on, let's allow for further engagements. Of course, if there are decisions to be taken, we'd go back to society and consult to say probably there's this decision to probably change the name or implement the decision of council and public participation. At that point, I guess would have a stakeholder engagement should we get to that point. But for now, what we know is that there's a discussion that has to happen between ourselves and national government because it affects sovereign, it affects diplomatic relations, and I think as the city we have a responsibility to handle this matter. But over and above, Clement, we did have also meetings with the U.S. consulate already by last year, where they did indicate and raised their concerns.
Okay.
However, they did indicate that they don't get involved in sovereign issues, but they are raising a concern, and they didn't want to either force us into a different decision or what. They just raised a concern.
Okay.
So we have good relations currently with the Consular General of the United States, who's here in Sandton, and we do engage from time to time.
Speaking of the president, he wasn't happy a couple of weeks ago when he was in the city. He was quite disappointed with the state of Johannesburg. He says it was disheartening to witness the city in disarray during the G20 meetings when they took place. You are the mayor of the city. The buck stops with you. The president wasn't satisfied at all.
Yeah, the president came out and frankly actually called me on the day before, on the day that he did the walkabout at the venue, and said, these are the concerns I have. And immediately went into the administration and said, guys, what's happening? And everybody had to put resources together. And I think the city was caught not ready at that point. I think the administration had overlooked some of the important issues. I think the thinking has always been maybe it's coming a bit later, only to find there was a meeting of foreign ministers coming on that day. And I think there was a quick reaction from the city to address the issues that needed to be addressed.
Did it have to take the president though, to come and raise that? Because South Africans complain every single day about the state of our roads, about traffic lights that are not working. So if you can manage and amass resources when the president raises a concern, why can't you do the same when the people of Johannesburg do?
We are doing exactly that, Clement. You are aware that for a month now we've been in the CBD, trying to unlock the CBD, trying to reclaim it back. We're focusing, but there are a number of limitations that we're also experiencing in the CBD of the city. Whether it's undocumented foreigners who are also giving us particular problems, especially in terms of street trading, where they will still insist on trading on areas that they shouldn't. When we get there, we remove. 4 hours later, they are back. We have to go back again, remove them. So it's an endless cycle. But we have an approach that we are now developing now that there are lessons that we have learned, of putting in place a plan which is solid. But we must also appreciate that especially South African traders have now come forward to say they would want to work with us so that we can set up proper trading spaces in buildings so that it's regulated, it's proper. So there's progress we are making there, because all the time or all these years they've just been trading willy-nilly. Now they realize that we are now stamping authority in as far as that. The biggest problem we still experience is homeless people all over the city, and we're trying to find a sustainable solution to deal with homeless. We do have a bit of shelters, but over the years, it has been demonstrated that they don't want to be in shelters because shelters are strict, they've got procedures, and it's a problem. So it's creating a problem mainly also in our parks throughout the city. We remove them, they come back, we remove them. So I've then said, let's look at a sustainable situation to deal with homelessness in the inner city. We still have a bigger problem around crime. We've done a bit of installation of cameras on small streets and other key areas to try and reduce the impact of crime in the inner city, but it also requires boots on the ground. So we are reshaping JMPD so that we can have more. We have also signed a contract with national government, with the Minister of Police, so that there should be constant raids. I think so far myself also had about 2 raids with the SAPS and JMPD. They're not sufficient. We need to be consistent in doing those raids because they will help us to reduce the impact of crime.
What about the potholes, traffic lights? Because as the city deteriorates, that's what a lot, water challenges as well. That's
water is a bigger issue. It's a bigger issue, but it's not a supply issue in the main. The biggest issue that we have is the aged infrastructure, which has a lot of leaks.
Why do we have a problem with infrastructure? Why hasn't the administration been maintaining it?
Okay. What we have also realized is that over the years, the maintenance budget has been lower than the national norm. And now we are trying to raise it high. I think we've agreed that in this budget, we'll put the maintenance budget at 6%, with an intention that next year it will increase to 7%, and the third year, the outer year, it will go to 8%.
Was there a reason why it was lowered?
Well, it could be as a result of, at that time, you feel the infrastructure is fine, you feel that there are other competing interests and needs. I think that's what probably the people who were there might have thought.
But when the ANC was in charge, what did the ANC do? Did they lower that budget?
Well, it would have been at 4-5%.
Which is still low.
Which is low. We accept, and that is why now I've decided with the collective that we are putting it at 6%, with an intention of growing it up to 8% on the third year. We think once it's at 8%, it's an acceptable level. It's within the national norm, but we'd prefer it to be around 10%. So that's what we're trying to do in addressing the... But the other bigger problem that continue to affect is vandalism and crime. For example, you'd know that, Clement, criminals will go and steal the copper in the robots, in the traffic signals. They will steal it today, will replace it in the next 2 days, immediately again. So it requires a concerted, comprehensive strategy that has to bring the police, cameras and so on to try and reduce. But we are also looking at options in DRA to reduce the size of the copper so that whatever is there then will not have value. Will not have value in the criminal market. Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do. Potholes, you know that we have experienced heavy rains. That's one of the reasons, which has affected us quite extensively because we'll do it today. A week later, the pothole is back again. So we took a view. Let's lessen, allow the rains to lessen, and then we'll go out on an aggressive war on potholes. There are those that are bigger that we are able to patch them, but those smaller ones, the rain simply removes them immediately. But we have also looked at the quality of our asphalt, that we must ensure is the right quality at all times. But also investing in trying to deal with resurfacing, especially major economic roads, so that they're not affected. We have to resurface. Most of our infrastructure has also reached 10 years, 15 years, therefore it requires resurfacing. So we are raising capital in terms of infrastructure, especially the water infrastructure, which we think we need to invest. The bulk of it is asbestos, so when it bursts, it means you can't patch, you must replace. And that's the investments we're trying to do.
All right. Mayor Dada Morero, thank you so much for coming through to engage with us.
Thank you so much, Clement. It's a great pleasure.
Thanks to you for watching the Tuesday edition of Face the Nation. We'll be back with you on Thursday at 8 p.m. Thanks for watching. Cheers.